bar up here at the top of your screen that says this meeting is now being recorded. This is the June 1st of 2021 Northside Green Zone Task Force meeting. And I'm going to hand it over to Jackie Taylor to kick us off.
Hey y'all, thanks for being here. I just wanted to make a quick announcement before we go into roll call. If you don't know, I work at St. Anthony Falls Lab on the river. And I'm part of the seminar committee. So normally we have research seminars every couple of weeks during the academic year. And I'm trying to organize an environmental justice in the Twin Cities theme seminar. So I wanted to see if any of my fellow Northside Green Zoners would be interested in the paid speaking opportunity. Especially I would like some elders to kind of talk about the history of environmental justice in the area. So I'm going to put my email in the chat after I get done talking. And then if you're interested, just reach out to me. I'll put my phone number too. And now we're going to do roll call. I was thinking for our icebreaker roll call question, we could all give a couple sentences on what we're daydreaming about recently. So recently I've been daydreaming about tearing up all the grass in my yard and planting a nice garden. But I'm a renter, so it'll stay a daydream for a little bit longer.
All right, so I'll go ahead and call roll for our task force members. And I will go on my agenda. I can't see everybody, the attendance list. So starting with Yolanda. You see Yolanda in the meeting. Nope. Chavez. Michael Cheney. Joanne Goddard.
I am here. Oh, I am tearing up my lawn and putting in a perennial garden. So I daydream constantly about what I'm going to do.
Awesome. Leslie.
Present. I daydream about doing placing air monitors. I don't know why, but I am, and doing some mapping. Getting outside, doing something.
Thank you. Marquita.
Yeah, hi, I'm here. I am daydreaming about the finish line of Ragnar race that I should not have signed up for.
Oh, I'm gonna have to grill you about that later. Andrew.
Present, daydreaming about live music outdoors.
I think Julie is still on vacation, or at least out. Lars.
Sorry, I am here. I had to unmute myself. I'm daydreaming about art. I have a new, relatively new job, but it's really picking up, and I'm in charge of basically all the visual and the art for a lot of clients. So that's all I've been.
Thanks, Lars. Lene. Oh, she's just coming on now. I'll come back to her. Roxanne. Michelle.
Hi, I am daydreaming about spending more time outside and less time at my computer and getting volunteers for edible boulevards.
And then Jackie, back to you just to do your roll call.
I'm here.
Anthony.
I guess I'm daydreaming about going back to the vacation spot that I was last week. So I get back here and daydream about leaving again. So I've been daydreaming about that all day. So good to see everybody.
Good to see you, Anthony.
You too.
And let's see, Akia.
Present. I am daydreaming about winter because there's no mosquitoes in winter at the moment.
Great. Jim.
I'm here. I don't know if it's daydreaming, but when it gets warm like this, I spend an awful lot of time thinking about ice cream, and I'm trying not to eat it, so I spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Great, thank you. Vanessa.
Hi, here, and I'm dreaming about health, healing. I'm trying to self-heal myself holistically. I'm just changing the way I do things, switching out some things, cleaning out the pantry, gonna do a 10 days vegetable and water, you know. So Jim, I have ice cream every day. You need to know every day.
Part
Yep,
of your
I
health
have
and healing.
Yeah, health and healing and traveling. I look forward to traveling this summer.
Great, thank you. Georgiana. Maybe not on yet. So I'll come back to Lene.
I'm here. I have a newborn, so I'm daydreaming about sleep.
Roxanne. We're doing roll call, and then if you're daydreaming about anything.
I'm daydreaming about a vacation.
Nice. Did I miss? Oops, sorry. Did I miss anyone for roll call?
I came late, but you don't have to include me. I'm good.
Okay. Yep, James. We're just going through the task force members right now.
Okay.
Did I miss any task force members for roll call? All right. Well, thanks everyone. So we have a quorum and we can move on with adoption of the agenda and acceptance of the minutes from May.
Okay, has everyone seen the agenda for today?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to accept?
Motion to accept June 1st agenda.
All right.
I
Is that
second
a
that.
second? Is that Joanne?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and now the minutes from May. How are those looking to everyone? Can I get a motion to accept?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, and then a second.
I second it.
This is Lars. I'll second that.
Okay, I think Leslie beat you to it, Lars, but.
All right, so I'll call roll call quick on the adoption of the agenda and the acceptance of the minutes. Joanne.
Yes.
Leslie.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Lars.
Yes.
Renee. Lene.
Oh, sorry. I yes.
Roxanne.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Jackie.
Yes.
Akia.
Yes.
Vanessa.
Yes.
And I see that Miss Anita has joined us. We are just doing the acceptance of the minutes and the adoption of the agenda.
Okay.
Do
Yes.
you accept them? Wonderful, thank you. And so the agenda is adopted and the meeting minutes are accepted. And I think we're moving on now to Andrew, who's gonna tee up the next part of the agenda.
Right, thanks, guys. So we just wanted to frame the presentation a little bit in respect to the letter that was sent as a group from the Northern Green Zones work plan. So wanted to run through a few items and highlight a few pieces of that letter as we get into the presentation. So we strongly feel that the redevelopment of any site in this corridor, particularly a publicly owned site, must be consistent with the Northern Green Zones work plan recommendations in the city's climate action plan. And there's 4 points that we wanted to highlight: assessment and reduction of cumulative impacts. We'd like to know how the city is assessing the cumulative impacts of this development and assuring the community that a reduction and net benefit is occurring during any project's construction, remediation, and operation. Also, like people-centered development, plans for the site should prioritize healing and investing in people in the surrounding community that have borne the legacy of the Upper Harbor Terminal operations along a heavily industrial corridor. 3, the correlation with the city's state and climate goals. The city should fully assess the impacts from a project's construction and operation on energy consumption and climate change, and in particular, the state and city's climate mitigation goals. Fourthly, we'd like to repair the ecosystem given the potential for soil erosion into the Mississippi River. There are serious concerns about the contaminants in the soil being released into the water and air, impacting the ecology and human health. In addition to that, we have some response to the alternative urban area-wide review scoping document. First, the Mississippi River critical area overlay. We believe the city should comply with the standards set by the Mississippi River critical area overlay rather than apply for conditional use permits. Regarding contamination of the site, according to the scoping document, the massive contamination is not going to be a part of the AUAR, and we'd ask why. When it comes to unidentified mitigation strategies, what are the mitigation strategies for protecting the impaired waters 1 mile away, the Mississippi River and the Shingle Creek? What are the mitigation strategies for stormwater impacts? Getting into cumulative impacts, what are the cumulative impacts of the 3 proposed future projects? Neighborhoods who suffer environmental injustices should have a higher set of standards for developers to meet. When it comes to stationary source emissions, we highly recommend completing air monitoring at GAF. There's still a proposal for housing along the Mississippi River. Then we must guarantee that it's safe for the community members who live there. Endangered species, how the AUAR study the impacts on the 4 state and federal listed endangered species within a mile of the site, and what will those impacts be? Wetlands, where are the wetlands and how are they going to be protected? And the AUAR versus EAW, we prefer that the city complete a more extensive and rigorous environmental review. So I know there's a lot of content to get through real quickly, but we wanted to frame the presentation around some of the concerns that we had and that we listed in the letter to the city. So from there, I'd like to turn it over and the presentation, let the presentation begin.
So Hillary and Hillary, I don't know which one of you is going to present first, or if you're going to have one of the guests present to start off this evening. But I did want to thank you, both of you and everyone else who is joining tonight. We really appreciate your time in responding to the questions raised by the task force.
Hello, good evening. I believe it's evening. I'm Hillary Holmes and I work for the City of Minneapolis and the Department of Community Planning Economic Development. And I also staff the Upper Harbor Terminal Collaborative Planning Committee, so serve in a similar capacity as Kelly does for the Northside Green Zone Task Force. So it is a pleasure to be here tonight and thank you again for having us. As you have seen, a number of materials went out with the meeting agenda, including some more general project update info, along with a memo describing the UHT coordinated plan drafting process to date. And so I am happy to go through the project update presentation. I realize not all of this information is new to you, and so I can make it as brief as we like tonight, so there's more time for discussion or questions. We just wanted to give some context again for where we're at in the overall process, and some more context for how the coordinated plan, as it is in current draft form, came to be. I can pull up that presentation, or if you had it ready to go, Kelly, if you'd like to, if we could walk through that.
I could probably pull it up, but if you have it open already, it'd probably be faster.
I do, yes. Okay, thanks. Just 1 second. Does that look all right?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, would you like me to go full screen?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Perfect.
All right, thanks. So a bit more context again about this project update. It has been updated as we've gone on. We started providing this project update to Northside and Northeast neighborhood organizations, community organizations, starting last fall as we were preparing for the draft coordinated plan outreach and engagement to kick off. So this again has been updated as we're now in May, and we started providing these last fall. Oops. Okay. So again, some more site context. Understanding, of course, that people are coming to this with different familiarity with the site, the location of it, the geography of it. And so this just includes some landmarks regarding where the site is, how large it is, and just different connections. This is not meant to be at all an exhaustive list of landmarks, but again, just to give some people that may be less familiar with it sense of where we are. The current redevelopment planning phase we're in, the reason that we are where we are today, didn't just start in 2015, of course. There were decades of planning and visioning prior to that, but the current phase of planning we're in began in 2015 when the city released a request for qualifications for a master developer of the site. There was some more visioning and engagement that went into it at that time. There has been involvement from the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board from early days, including from this time of the planning process. So the city and the park board were working together as we still are to this day. And that took us through a couple of years of visioning as that request for qualifications was released, some more engagement around master developer selection, and then began work on community input and engagement to come up with a draft concept plan for the site. The city council approved that concept plan for the site in March of 2019, and at that time created the Upper Harbor Terminal Collaborative Planning Committee. That committee was established and seated and came together and started meeting late June of 2019. The committee has continued to meet, and I'll get into that a little more on the following slide about the different roles of the three bodies or groups I've identified on this page. Again, just
excuse me, not to be
yes.
rude, but I can't see your screen. So is it the draft you're looking at, coordinated plan? Because all I have is a blank screen. So that's why my hand is up, and I wasn't trying to be rude. I'm just trying to follow along.
Were others having any problems seeing Hillary's screen? And Hillary, you're on mute right now.
Sorry, I was just saying, I apologize. I was just going to stop sharing for a minute to try to get it back.
Yeah, I can see your screen just fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Leslie, if that's just an issue on Oh, you said so. Can you, Vanessa?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, so Leslie, if that's just an issue on your side, all the materials that or the slides that Hillary is going through was sent in the email. So I think
I
you
was
would
just
just be,
asking which
yeah.
one. I
Oh, which
have them pulled
slide?
up.
Okay,
Yeah, is
perfect.
she doing the draft coordinating plan? I don't know.
Okay, I'll be sure to call out the slide numbers. I think that's usually helpful. And I
No,
forgot to do that. I
the
haven't
title,
presented for a
the
little while.
title.
The document
Okay,
title?
so it's the very first one. Okay, got it. Thank you. I was
Okay.
just trying to follow along. And it's not on my end. I have an Android phone.
Okay, so I'll start sharing again. And again, this is the PDF that's labeled Upper Harbor Project Update, May 2021. And I was just finishing on slide 3 or page 3 of the PDF around Upper Harbor community engagement. So what we have been up to since the UHT CPC convened, the Park Board CAC convened around the same time, and I understand you had an update from Park Board, Kate Lamers of the Park Board at your May meeting. And so the Park Board CAC had convened summer of 2019 as well, as did a community partner community engagement events called the Learning Tables. And those were brought together and produced by the Public Policy Project, EJCC, and with support from Pillsbury United Communities as a fiscal sponsor and financial support through the McKnight Foundation. The development team and city staff have been participating in those events to date, and so we're present at those monthly engagement events. So you can see that, and as you have experienced as a committee with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've transitioned to online meetings, and all of those groups were able to successfully do that last summer. And so the UHT CPC had their last meeting in January, most recent meeting in January, and we'll be reconvening next week, next Wednesday, for our regular meeting. Throughout that process, through those 3 different spaces in particular for the city staff, the UHT CPC, and the learning tables, we heard not just these things on the screen, but this is of course a snapshot of some of the input received around these 6 project values. And so that's what the headers on this page are, this what we heard page. Both the learning tables and the CPC were tackling the same topics in tandem. And so input was received by the development team and city staff and park board staff, I should note also, particularly through both of those groups throughout this process. Another very important piece of this process is called the Upper Harbor Terminal Equitable and Resilient Inclusive Development Matrix. The city's Division of Race and Equity worked with the UHT CPC and city staff and the development team to develop this matrix. And this is to support the UHT CPC in developing the draft coordinated plan, providing guidance for the coordinated plan. I shouldn't say just the UHT CPC, but of course the city as well. And that is organized around those 6 project values, which are also referred to as 6 key values. And again, you'll see that those are the topics that have resonated. Those are the values that were in the concept plan and refined by the UHT CPC and have been carried through into the draft coordinated plan. And you'll see on this next slide, on slide 7, a little more about the sources and references used to develop the matrix, in particular, a number of city policies and plans and some external city resources as well. And that, of course, includes the Northside Green Zone goals. I know we refer to the goals a lot. Of course, there's also the Northside Green Zone work plan, and so that takes it a step further. And you can see on slide 8, a little more around the redevelopment planning process, how it's being guided by the exclusive negotiated rights agreement, which was the result of that master developer request for qualifications and that selection process. the concept plan and the role that that has played, and now the role that the coordinated plan will play. And as you know, also attached in the materials for today was the draft coordinated plan, and that was dated February of 2021. So that has come out of the UHT CPC and was at City Council for an update in February. And we'll go back to the City Council later this year following the completion of the environmental review process. These were some images, renderings, illustrative renderings that were included, and you may have seen as part of the draft coordinated plan some of the communications, outreach, engagement materials, and this is showing a few different views. The draft coordinated plan, again, since the entire document was attached, this is as a project update, provided a higher level of the information that's contained in the plan. And you'll see
Hello?
a number.
Do you live in the low rise? Do you live in the low rise?
Miss Georgiana, I think you're not on mute, ma'am.
I just muted her, Roxanne. Thanks.
And as you'll see, thanks, Kelly. You'll see a number of public benefits that are being recommended and should be achieved through the Upper Harbor Draft Coordinated Plan and the ultimate redevelopment of the Upper Harbor Terminal. Here on slide 11 is another view of that, another representation of that, showing kind of a bird's eye or aerial view of the site and the different phases. Well, this slide in particular doesn't break down into the two development phases. It shows them all together. The coordinated plan itself does show the two different development phases. And again, this is more by the numbers to show the uses being proposed, the location of those uses, the park in particular, the alignment of the new North-South Parkway through the site, and again, some more information or details, sorry, about the real estate plan. This is a little more about the schedule, again, where we've been since the fall, since the release of the draft coordinated plan, where we are now, and as we're going forward through the remainder of 2021. Of course, subsequent presentation from city staff and some staff from Kinley Horn Consulting, the consultant firm, completing the AUAR. They'll be talking more about the next steps through the AUAR process itself. This shows a little more about the different paths or the kind of different concurrent paths happening. So engagement is still happening on the public realm design, and that's being led by City of Minneapolis Public Works. The environmental review process is ongoing, as you know. The final draft coordinated plan would be going back to the UHT CPC later this summer. So following the AUAR and before the AUAR goes to council. So the UHT CPC will reconvene again later this summer as they've requested to come back together during critical milestones during the environmental review process, along with the final draft coordinated plan, which may be updated according to what comes out of the AUAR. There are also term sheets for the phase 1 development, and then also redevelopment agreements for those phase 1 developments that would need to be approved by City Council. And that would be following completion of the AUAR. And so that would be estimated to be later this year. And as you may also know from your presentation and discussion from the park board at your May meeting, that the engagement on the park and park design will continue as well. And that's according to, and that would be MPRB's purview. So with that, we can answer any questions. There are some other project team members here, and I say project team, and that's not just city project team. So we're happy to answer questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing if that's okay. If you'd like me to continue sharing, I can, but I think it's usually better to be able to see people.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Michael.
It's interesting that people always talk about public ownership. Let me ask one question. There must be two sets of rules that public ownership, who is going to own the land that the proposed amphitheater is going to sit on?
Hi, Michael. Yeah, this is Hillary. And the proposed land ownership in the draft coordinated plan for the outdoor music performance venue is a combination of the First Avenue and a community entity. The draft coordinated plan details and has in more detail the proposed partnership between First Avenue entity and a community entity.
So I want to begin the conversation there, because that is the height of white supremacy, of institutional racism, that the only one that can own that public land is Dana Franks and her team, whereas any of the other remaining uh, droplets from the lips of the developers can't be owned by any entity but by the public. So after Dana Frank gorges on her $12 million of our public dollars, and after she feeds from the public trough, the rest of us are left with the slop. So that's one issue that I have, that it is, once again, we never seem to learn. We talk about redlining, we talk about covenants, land covenants, but we keep on building entitlement into every model that we keep passing forward. And it's interesting that the University of Minnesota has a project called Mapping Prejudice. So in the latest version of this plan is no different than any other plan that's come forward. The only difference is it's stalled because some of the resistance, the people have forced the hand around the environmental issues. But you folks never seem to learn that Christopher Columbus did not discover America. You keep on bringing the same old hackneyed ideas into the public discussion instead of wiping the slate and really starting forward in an authentic, truthful manner that really talks about designing from the grassroots up rather than the top down. So I see this plan no different than what we've seen for generation after generation. It just reinforces white supremacy. It reinforces institutional racism. And at a time when I hear all of this empty rhetoric about equity and inclusion, we're still stuck on stupid. We still want to sell all of us on this idea that Queen Dana is the only one that has a plan, and certainly we ought to give her $12.5 million because she's so needy in a time when the entertainment industry's future is unknown, in a time when the city's been burnt to the ground, and in a time when we have an opportunity to really take this piece of land and really frame it in an truly authentic, equitable way that could address reparations and for the Native American and African American community. And this plan, as it's been since day one, is just a hollow Trojan horse that brings no value to the green movement, brings no value to North Minneapolis and the residents who have been marginalized for 400 years. Stolen land, stolen labor, refried beans that's going to give $12.5 million in ownership to Dana Franks, but anybody from the community cannot talk about ownership. If you call that equity, if you're in your heart of hearts, you call that fair, addressing the wrongs of history, then I would urge you to look at the Tulsa, the Greenfield Initiative, and all of this stuff that's talking about on the heels of George Floyd. This does not get us anywhere close to where we need to be. This is an outrage.
I saw a couple hands go up while Michael was talking. I'm wondering if somebody has raised their hand to respond or if those are just other questions.
This is Melissa Newman. I have a response to that. As a CPC member, it was my understanding that the city was going to continue to own the land, that Dana was not going to, and First Ave was not going to own the land, but that they were going to lease the land for 63 and a half odd years. And as far as lease agreements and monies that were going to be recouped from the lease agreement with Dana and the city of Minneapolis for the land, that the monies, a portion of the money and proceeds were going to go back to the Northside for programs and things of that nature, but that Dana was not going to physically own the land. After the lease was completed in 63 odd years, then it was up for discussion at that point. But so I don't know if Hillary can recap on that to just clarify that, because what I heard from her is just basically say that the community entity, Dana, and the city was going to own that land.
Kelly, I can add to that conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
So for those that don't know me, my name is Eric Hansen. I'm the city's economic development director, and we have proposed public ownership of the site, either through the public park board, the retention of right-of-way, or the long-term ground lease. One place where we've had a challenge is with some of the rules in the state with respect to bonding at the music venue site, and so we would control that site until the state's interest, that's 63 years. But then after that, it would collapse down, and a community entity along with First Avenue would own the property. So there would be a community ownership. Now, we've learned recently, and we haven't talked to the CPC about this, that those rules have changed. And so we will be discussing that about public ownership into perpetuity of that land. So that's where that point is. So we are looking at that from that fact. But this is similar to the bonding that goes into all the other cultural institutions in the city, the McPhail, the Guthrie, the Orchestra Hall. You have this what's called the sandwich, where the property is owned by the entity, the city controls it till it's the state's done, and then the entity operates it. So this is a little bit more unique when we talk through the CPC about the interest for community ownership, and that's why there was this idea of having a community entity partner with First Avenue. And as far as the land proceeds for the remaining balance of the land, the recommendation to the city council will be that all of the land sale or all of the lease proceeds would go into a special fund, and that special fund would then be used for reinvested into the Northside based off of recommendations from a committee. Would look at that, and we haven't figured out who that committee will be, and the city council would make the final action. And then the music venue itself is developing a community benefits agreement to have a surcharge that would go directly to a community group, and that's like $3 a ticket. And that would not touch the city, so the city council wouldn't make any decisions on that. But that's the other funding source that Melissa was referring to.
Thanks, Eric. I think Michelle, you had your hand up next. I also saw there was a comment in the chat.
Thanks, Kelly. It's interesting to me that environmental justice is one of the essential tenets of the coordinated plan, and that green zone goals and principles are mentioned as being included. However, the Northside green zone was not included. And we're the ones who have been convened for exactly the purpose, to confront equity, gentrification, housing, health. So much falls under environmental justice. So I'm wondering who decided not to include the Northside Green Zone and all the members who are here into the creation of the coordinated plan.
I can address that too. So the city council gave us a direction at the approval of the concept plan, where they established what's now called the Collaborative Planning Committee, and that is the appointed board and commission that had the task of creating the coordinated plan. And so we've been working with them since off and on for like 3 years now. I forget, the time kind of stands still over the last year for me. So we've been working with them over the last few years to develop the coordinated plan based on the concept plan. And there is an amendment in the concept plan for coordination with the green zone. And then that, we made sure that we took the principles, the 12 principles. We had 3 members of the Green Zone Task Force on the CPC to have some cross pollination and then coordination through Kelly and Hillary as we went along in the process. So that's the direction the city council took when they approved the concept plan and created a separate committee to do the work of the coordinated plan.
Okay, so the plan was to not include the committee because you specifically told the members who were on the CPC that their job was to represent the green zone?
I don't think I understand your question, Michelle. Can you say it again? Might be a bad connection.
So you let Vanessa know, and I don't know who the other 2 members are that you're referring to. You let Vanessa know that it was her job to speak up about the green zone?
Yeah, many people spoke up about the green zone while we were doing the process. We incorporated the 12 principles into our planning process. And so the green zone is always the climate action plan, the historic preservation commission, city plans, MINRA. There's a ton of other things that apply to the planning of the Upper Harbor.
And I wasn't there.
Excuse me, can I speak here? This is Vanessa Willis.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
So during that time, we were operating as CPC members when we were putting this plan together. On several occasions, we did bring up the Northern Green Zones. We also brought up a meeting with Northern Green Zone. All those questions were posed in those meetings. We did not solely pick the green zone things to be in the plan. They went by the plans that they had. We asked more than once to meet with the green zone people. So let's clarify that, because it's been, for some reason, people think that I have been deceitful and have not talked to you guys or came to you guys about meet with the green zone. Please clarify that did happen with those members of us that was on the green zone force. Let's clarify that so that we can get past this part. Please.
Hillary, can you help me with the back and forth between you and Kelly about meeting?
Even if you have to go back and check the minutes, go back and check the minutes.
Hi, everybody. This is Hillary again. So as staff to the UHT CPC, I can confirm that some of the members that overlapped with the green zone, in particular, in this case, Vanessa, had asked about coordination with the green zone. Kelly and I do coordinate at a staff level, which isn't everything, of course, but that is some ongoing communication that we have. When there were requests to meet with the green zone, the CPC as a whole did discuss it. And when there were some other requests for joint meetings, the CPC typically discussed what the purpose of those meetings would be. And also some committee members expressed concern that they would not be able to spend enough time attending to the committee work that they needed to as the CPC. Those conversations continued around what a purpose of a meeting like that would be. And we did, on all sides, CPC members, me as committee staff, and the learning tables team continue to encourage people to still engage with the learning tables, as that was a place where many people came together, including CPC members, and that would be a place to make concerns, to bring concerns to light, to discuss other ways to provide input, and to address concerns. So the green zone principles and goals, I would restate, have been incorporated and addressed. And there has been continued communication between the two committees, and that the CPC charge to complete the draft coordinated plan has been what the CPC has been working on, and not solely tasked with being the only conduits between the two committees.
Yeah, and I can share also from my perspective that, well, like mostly just want to apologize to the task force members if this was something that I should have moved forward sooner. I know over the last, let's see, through all of 2020, we had new leadership step up, and it was my responsibility to help support that capacity building and the agenda setting and following up with requests for different staff presentations and on different topics that were of concern. I know we definitely had, everyone had some challenges with COVID, the murder of George Floyd, and there were a lot of agenda items shifted, and we prioritized some conversations with the state around air pollution and COVID last fall. But if I'm sure this was an item that I could have been more on top of in terms of getting more regular presentations and updates to the task force. So I want to own my responsibility in this and just apologize for that. I think there's definitely more that we could have done, and I'm hoping that we can partly acknowledge that and see what can we do going forward with the remaining decision-making opportunities there are, whether it's with the environmental review, and I know Hillary Dvorak is here to speak to the environmental review process as well, and other decisions yet to be made on the coordinated plan. So I'm wondering, are there additional questions? I see Michelle still have your hand up. Leslie has her hand up, and
I would like to talk too, but I'll wait
okay.
until everybody's done.
Okay, Michelle's hand's down. Leslie, did you want to go next?
Yes. First of all, I'm appalled. And I'd like to apologize to Vanessa. And I don't know, Mr. Hansen and everybody else with the CPC just ignored the green zone. Like our opinion doesn't matter and we live here. And that's what's wrong with the situation, as Michael pointed out. You're not including us of anything. You want to sit down with us, but then we say stuff, you ignore it. And if you did incorporate it, we wouldn't be writing this letter to submit to you about anything and the changes that you haven't done. And my biggest thing is you got all this planning with 4 inspectors, the city, the county. I asked the park board, everybody, oh, the city, oh, this and that. You people need to get it together about the management of how you're doing things and the lack of communication and respect for other people that have concerns who live in this community. You got a music thing going on. We don't have any police. And that venue is going to bring all kinds of entities into our community. We already have drive-by shootings and who knows who's doing what. And then we have, then I have to worry about this going on. I won't even allow my grandson to come over to North Minneapolis or none of my grandchildren. But we have all these other entities going on, and the project's just going on as normal without taking into any consideration, without putting a hold on it and reevaluating the situation in our city. We're doing emissions cut down plans. We have all kinds of different environments, and it's not just about George Floyd kicking it off. These are things that needed to be addressed without the poor man getting killed. And for the reformery, we don't have any police over in North Minneapolis. We don't have any inspectors to control our pollution that's killing us. So, you know, it's a vicious cycle. And just because you don't live over north, don't think you're not being affected. I'm just appalled of the lack of respect that you've shown this organization, the city people, and then having the nerve to bypass one of the North Green Zone participants that was trying to speak out. And I apologize again, Vanessa, about it. And you guys should never disrespect anybody's opinion when it comes to the concern of our community. And that's all I got to say for right now.
Thank you, Leslie. Jackie, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just wondering if either of these presentations would address the comments that we made about the AUAR in our letter. They both
That's
just
a good
kind of,
question, Jackie. Thank
they
you.
both just seem like you guys are talking at us about what you're already doing. And then I was looking over the AUAR presentation, and there was information on how to submit feedback, but we've already done that. And I was under the impression that this would be your chance to respond to our feedback. So are we going to get to that part of the presentation?
Yeah. Well, I want to interject something. Why are all of us acting as if we're surprised that the Green Zone Task Force wasn't listened to? Ask Michelle Shaw. She was part of an environmental group who raised these same valid concerns that I've heard all of you. They weren't listened to. Ask Paul Bachnight, who is an architect and was part of the CPT or whatever they called the bogus kangaroo court that was formulated, that who resigned in protest because he wasn't being listened to. That is the premise of white supremacy, that the city staff and Eric Hansen and whoever else, when we, again, you haven't listened, you refuse to listen. Fortunately enough, there's been a pleasant turnaround, I must say, and that is what's happening on the south side. Finally, there's a movement on the south side that maybe the bullshit thing that they tried to force down the throat of the roof people, that it's maybe now that those people down there might be able to take their life and their future, their community, in back from the power brokers who were going to stifle and stomp all over their visions and dreams. And so I would hope that what's happening with the roof people might happen up here in terms of the Upper Harbor. But as long as Dana Franks, the only person in God's green earth who can only her and her alone, and this dim-witted idea of an amphitheater that has not only divided our community, lied to our community, continues to lie to our community, steals the funds that I personally went to the Minneapolis the McKnight Foundation to get $250,000 to reimagine North Minneapolis, and those funds got squandered and turned around. We wouldn't be at this juncture today. It would already been signed, sealed, and delivered if it wasn't for the brave individuals like Michelle Shaw and a few other people from the Upper Harbor folks who fought back viciously, the Minneapolis, the Mississippi folks who said, this is absurd, this is nonsense, this is a perpetuation of white supremacy, this is not for our community, but it's for suburban youth who will come into our community and who will steal the chicken from our mouths. And again, it's obvious that again, whether or not it's redlining or it's covenant land covenants, that it's the same old, a few folks who come into our community and to divide and conquer and to, again, discount the valuable ideas that people in the community have been trying to birth.
Hey, on that note, I really wanted to hear a response from Jackie's question. And since we constantly get our time wasted when we come to these meetings, as far as like follow up, Michael, I also was waiting to talk. I just think it's very, you know, it would be fair to hear the answer to Jackie's question and then to move to the next person, because I think we got like 3 people who still want to talk, and I think you had an opportunity already.
Well, I'm going to have an opportunity to say goodnight to all of you who want to sell the future of North Minneapolis down the river. Have a pleasant green zone meeting.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah,
Can
no,
we
today
go
was my
over to
birthday.
Jackie?
Excuse me, order. With that being said, we're at 5:59. They still have presentation to go. So the next 2 people that need to speak, you need to quickly speak so that we can move on back to the presentation and get through to the rest of the agenda items, please. Thank you. Jackie, you had a question?
It wasn't answered because Michael kind of was like, why are you shocked that they're not answering the questions? That's why I told him it's a good idea for him to let other people go and for her question to be answered, because I still would like to speak as well. So can her question be answered first?
Jackie?
Hi, this is Hillary. I just had my hand up, but I'm just going to speak. If there's someone else ahead of me, please tell me. Sorry about that. So I was just going to note that the reason we thought tonight would be a good meeting, and especially following the scoping order letter that the Green Zone submitted, is that this is during the public comment period for the draft AUAR and mitigation plan. And so it is during a public comment period right now during the environmental review process. That is not something that I'm working on directly, but my colleague Hillary Dvorak is, which is why she's at this meeting tonight. And we'll be able to speak to that. So will still be on the meeting, but I think this might be a good time to turn it over, unless there were other comments from task force members related to the overall project update.
Yeah, I had a few things to say. So hopefully I'm going to say it in about, I don't know, 3 minutes or less. One, I'm very disappointed because constantly, you know, millionaires and just people with money in general, they divide and conquer our community with philanthropy, with, you know, their money. They come in here and then, you know, you got community members kind of just running around stressed out, you know, trying to figure it out. And I'm just disappointed because like I can see it clearly. I can see when people are just like offering our community, you know, pennies, and you know, they got millions of dollars on their mind. They're not even really thinking about what we are saying, but more of like, what do they want? Let me just give them what they want, and you know, a little bit of what they want, and you know, like, let's hurry this up. And it's the process is really just foul. You know, it's been foul from the beginning. Those who had opinions that of concern have been quieted and or paid, and so it feels like well, just let me stay to my point so I don't go over. I will say that um, it feels a lot of buying of people instead of doing the real work with community first to see what we wanted. The green industry is actually what we need in that area, and I don't, you know, I've tried to work with Dana and Brandon to talk about, you know, how they could do better, or you know, just to come up with different things instead of just their own ideas. And I felt like that was on deaf ears. And because I left the group, I feel like there was also reasons that I left the group, like feeling like overworked and ignored as far as like my work with being a part of the group, the co-creation group that made a lot of those demands and pushed a lot of that work forward. You know, there was it's like we did a lot of that work. It's not like you guys did that work. It's like that list of things was given to you guys adopted it, it moved forward, but then you still like silenced the voices that talked about the concerns overall holistically about the situation. Another thing, the job, every time we talk about the jobs and the money to the neighborhood, it's a little fuzzy to me. It's like we're going to pay people livable wage jobs. It's like, well, what's livable wage? You know what I mean? Because the cost of living keeps going up. The cost of living will keep going up. The prices of housing will go up. So like that's never been clear. It's always kind of, I think it's been like insinuated. It's like $15 an hour, but we know that that's not enough for people to be able to benefit off of this coming in. And that was a lot of money that was given in public dollars to invest in this, which could have been given to the community to do some different things that we had wanted to do with it. But we didn't know, that we could have got some state bonding to do something, different. So I just feel like the process was bad because we're supposed to have some options here, not just here's one option, it moves forward. We kept being lied to and told, well, it's not set in stone. We have a chance to like have other options, but right now there's an exclusive rights agreement and, we've got to honor that. We can't work with anybody else until this, while the exclusive rights agreement is, true or whatever, set in stone. But then the exclusive rights agreement was like extended indefinitely because of COVID, and that, yes, that's an unforeseen kind of public health issue. But I also think that it's inconsiderate that it was just kind of like, it was moved to be indefinite without the public's notice. Like nothing, there was no conversation about it. Somebody just made that decision. Another thing, the housing has always been questionable to me. I really don't like it. I do not like, people getting a lot of money to build something, for a community that they are not from, that they don't live in. And you get to make the decision around who gets to live in these buildings or who gets to live in this housing. I don't feel like we should have to, there's no such thing as a concentration of poverty. There's such thing as a concentration of white supremacy and hoarding of resources. That's what it is. But instead, we constantly live in a society and the government tells us it's our fault. It's our fault for our oppression. It's our fault that the river was bought by GEF for $1. It's our fault that Northern Metals is on there. We should have moved to a better, more richer neighborhood. And now you're coming over here with all your money dangling in front of us and telling us how much money you've put into this work. And we've been here before you putting in work. Spiritually, like I told Brandon, like you said something one day, like, well, we've put all this money into it. And it's like, hold on. That's white people's problem in the first place. You come over to a piece of land and you think that you can buy it, but you can't. Your money is not worth what our land is. Your money is not worth what you're sacrificing, and this is bigger than the Northside, honestly. Like what we do up here affects everybody at the bottom of the river. So this is something crucial and urgent in time right now. Like we have a moment here to do something amazing. And instead we're going for mediocre once again. Whose decision was that? And, I'm just pushing on y'all because I've been a part of all of it, from Juxta's stuff to trying to talk with Dana privately, trying to talk with Brandon, meeting up, being on the co-creation team, being on EJCC, being on the Green Zones, being on the Northern Metals Consent Decree. I mean, I'm all over the fucking place. And then every time I notice, like, none of this is true. You're not telling the whole story. We were told that different plans would be possible in the future, but not while the exclusive rights agreement was in order. It looks like y'all just keep pushing this forward. We're never going to get a chance to have it. Hold on, I got two more things and then I'm done.
Okay.
we were told if the community kept saying no, Dana, you said this on your own. I know you're on the call. You told me if the community kept saying no, that you would back off. You didn't keep that promise. And you're just going along with whoever is going to allow you to do what you need to do. Now, I understand we've had conversations about business and how you were taught different things than I was, right? I'm an organizer, you're a businesswoman. But I will just say CPC wasn't set up to say no. CPC was set up to keep the plan moving. I might be saying it wrong. CPEC, CPCP, Forgive me for all these acronyms. And I think the last thing I wanted to say was, Kelly, I'm just kind of like frustrated because we did put out a development criteria, and that should have been sent, that's been sent off. I know CPAD has gotten what we said about the development criteria. Now, whether or not it was solidified or any of that, we finished that language. We wrote what our principles were. That was finished. They saw that. That was not included in anything that they talked about. Yeah, so I think I hit all the things at least that I can remember at this moment. So I'm done.
What I want to say, all this is called is environmental injustice. It's the inequalities and keeping us down. It's keeping us inclusive. It's setting boundaries. It's giving us a disadvantage. What jobs? We gonna go into the stadium and work as ushers and things in our own neighborhood? You know,
like US Bank Stadium, they told us the same thing with that.
Yep. And see, you're talking in sugarcoat and using words and reusing definitions when it comes to our lives. You don't live over north. You will be affected by the effects. And like I said, we only have I don't see no plans of really starting of any of these, not just this project, but any of the city projects, and you're still opening up the earth. And you're constantly not just killing the north side, and there's white people that live over there and travel over there. It's not just these black people, but we're educated, you know, and we understand the terminologies, and you keep us at a disadvantage. And you come in here sugarcoating everything without anything to give. And you're not taking care of what you already have in our community. And if I have to get a sign and walk up and down the streets everywhere, yes, I will. You know, and you're not helping us. You're not even trying to, you want to keep moving things forward, but you're not looking at what's happening in our community to even help us. But you want to come in and get paid.
I remember Leslie,
I'm done.
So Leslie, on that note, that last thing that you just said is real. You guys are ready to move forward with the vote without even doing the environmental impact study. So how did you have anything green zones going on? How did you miss that part? And who's to say y'all not missing way much more? If you missed that part and you were ready to do something illegal, I just think that you owe our community a chance. Like, you owe us to go back to the beginning, because you know that this is not an equitable process, and it hasn't been. And some of us feel that all the money was thrown
rodeo. It ain't them same Northsiders, okay? It's not them same Northsiders that in transplant. I'm born and raised Minneapolis Northside. Born and raised. I've seen the changes, and I see what's been the injustice. I've had that.
Okay, order. Okay, ladies, we hear your statements, but you guys are standing in one spot and not moving. We've heard everything that you said. We need to move forward.
Vanessa, I don't appreciate that.
Why not? You said over and over.
Later about it, though, but don't undermine what we're talking about, please.
I'm not trying to undermine you, but I'm trying to do my. I'm trying to do.
And you always talk about you can't breathe. Why can't you breathe? Check out the air. Check out what you breathing. Look at the contaminants that's happening in the city.
I already know about them. We already know about all that.
And here we go on another rodeo to keep on condemning us. You know, keep it up.
We talk about it every month. We know those things.
I went through a whole lot to get this knowledge, and there was a reason why I went through what I did at the U. Okay, it's a reason why. You know, if I have to stand alone to say it, this is my mission. And people can't say things that know is wrong because that's their paycheck. That's their vacation.
I don't know what you're referring to, because I don't know what paycheck you're talking about.
I'm talking
who
about
you're
people that
referring
work
to.
I'm talking about
I don't know who you're talking about or who you're referring to. But you're hijacking the meeting. You're stopping us from getting any talking and stuff done, you guys.
Don't manage us. Let's move forward and manage
I'm
these.
not trying to manage you. I'm trying to manage the meeting, please. And I'm trying for us to stay, we can speak what we need to speak and be respectful about it.
Andrew, I thought you was running this.
Let's please do
Andrew,
that.
where you
Please,
What-
you guys.
at?
Was Jackie?
All right, hold
was
on,
Jackie's
hold on.
question
Let's
ever
one person
answered?
at a time.
Was Jackie's question?
I told you,
even answered?
Andrew.
Yeah, hold on. All right.
I'm not
Jackie, are you
Yeah,
qualified
so
to
I think
step
that
in
was
on all this,
Melissa.
but
are you able to identify what recommendations was in this letter, Jackie?
Yeah, Andrew read those at the beginning of the meeting. So there were 4 specific to the coordinated plan, and I can't remember how many specific to the environmental review, the UAR.
8 on that side. And I can share them on the screen if that would make it easier.
I'd be fine waiting until the second presentation for my question to get answered.
I think that sounds like a good idea because there are a couple that are similar between the coordinated plan and the AUAR. All right, so then next we have Hillary Dvorak to speak to the environmental review.
Good evening. I am just going to pull up. Of course it was there and now it's not there. Sorry, everyone. Now I'm having issues with my screen, with my computer. I'm so sorry. Let's see. Sorry, you guys. I was prepared and now I'm not. Sorry.
I think I have it up if you want me to share my screen.
Yeah, it's not letting me. Let me try. Let me close out and try it again. I apologize.
It looked like you were trying to open a
There it is.
Still in a zip folder instead of the actual extracted folder.
Sorry.
Okay, there we go. See it.
Right there. Okay. Sorry. Okay. I'm Hillary Dvorak. I'm with the City of Minneapolis. I'm in Community Planning and Economic Development. I work on environmental reviews for the City of Minneapolis. So this presentation is specific to the AUAR, the draft AUAR mitigation plan that is out there right now for 30-day comment. The letter that we received from the Northside Green Zone Task Force was responding to the scoping document for the AUAR. So that portion of the process was making sure that we are studying the right things. So we were asking, do we have the right things being studied? We received all of the comment letters. Northside Green Zone Task Force was one. There were other letters. We responded to that, and then that went to City Council for approval back in March. And all of that information was sent out with the agenda for tonight's meeting. So this presentation, again, coming back to the AUAR, we'll go through the project background, why we are doing an AUAR, what was studied in it, and how you can comment on it. The purpose then tonight is to provide information about the AUAR and process and project schedule, and then give you information on about how to comment on the AUAR. Again, I'm Hillary Dvorak. We also have Alexander Cato from the City of Minneapolis Transportation or Public Works Department, excuse me, is the transportation planner. Kate Lammers from the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board. Brandon Champeau and Tom Strom from United Properties, and then Dana Frank from First Avenue. So we will all be here to answer questions, and there are others from the city and the development team on the call as well. So what is an AUAR? The AUAR process is a hybrid of the Environmental Assessment Worksheet, or the EAW, and the Environmental Impact Statement Review process. And the AUAR document uses a list of questions adapted from the EAW form, but provides a level of analysis of typical urban area impacts comparable to an EIS. The purpose of an AUAR is to analyze cumulative impacts of anticipated development scenarios within a given geographic area and inform local planning and zoning decisions based on environmental review. So why are we doing an AUAR versus an EAW, which is one of the questions or comments in your letter? So the state of Minnesota requires environmental reviews on proposed developments of a certain size and scale. This project meets the requirements to complete an AUAR, which again is a planning tool to understand how different development scenarios will affect the environment of their community before the development occurs. There are 3 scenarios that are studied in the AUAR. One is a no-build scenario, and then scenario 1 and scenario 2. Both the no-build scenario, nothing would change. So the site would stay as it is. Things would continue to go on as they currently do. For scenarios 1 and 2, that is where we pick up development scenarios. Both of them exceed the minimum thresholds that are required for an EAW to be done. However, neither of them meet the minimum thresholds for an EIS. So we have chosen, and the city council has approved the scoping document for the AUAR. And so now what we've done and where we're at is we have studied those 3 scenarios, and then we released on May 25th the draft AUAR mitigation plan. And some of the questions that you asked in the letter are actually answered in this document now. So this builds on what you saw back in the early part of 2021. So this is a map of the site, as you, I'm sure, are all aware of where it's at. It is approximately 53 acres of land between Dowling and Lowry Avenue, if you will, and then I-94 and the river. United Properties, in partnership with First Avenue Productions, the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board, and the City of Minneapolis, is proposing to redevelop all 53 acres of the site. There is a 19.5 acre public park included in both scenarios 1 and 2. And as Hillary Holmes had mentioned earlier, both scenarios would be built out in 2 separate phases. And those phases are represented in the color scheme on the map in front of you. So what did we study? So 3 scenarios were studied. The first was the no-build scenario. Again, nothing would change under this scenario. Scenario 1 then represents what is shown in the draft coordinated development plan. And scenario 2 then is the maximum density allowed under the comprehensive plan. And scenario 2 must be studied for the environmental review. You must study the maximum that's allowed under a city's comprehensive plan. And you can see, the different types of uses that are in here: residential, commercial, non-commercial, so office or industrial. Production and processing is the term that we're now using in the comp plan, and it's going to be integrated into the zoning code. The music venue, and then the recreation use, which is the park. And you can see that in these 3 scenarios, 2 aspects of them remain constant, and that is the park and the music venue. So again, the first scenario that was studied was the no-build scenario. You will not see any reference to the no-build scenario in the mitigation plan, which is that last part of the document that you received. There is no mitigation required for this development scenario because nothing would change. The scenario 1 then is the draft coordinated development plan. So this is another graphic representation that was shown earlier tonight that shows what is being studied. And then the second scenario was the maximum density allowed under the comprehensive plan. So within the AUAR, there are topics, if you will, that are studied and analyzed. This list represents most of those topics that are, or the topics, excuse me, that are in the AUAR. These are questions or comments that are adapted from that EAW form. And there's much more detail, obviously, in the document that goes through all of these different topic areas. One aspect of the AUAR that must be done is a mitigation plan. So the draft and the final AUAR documents must include an explicit mitigation plan, and that's based on the findings of potential impacts in the resources studied in the AUAR, and is a commitment by the RGU, or the responsible governmental unit. In this case, that is the City of Minneapolis, to prevent potentially significant impacts from occurring. So now these next several slides go through those topic areas. Again, this is in the AUAR, and then when you get to the mitigation plan, it looks somewhat like this, where you have the impact and then you have the mitigation strategy listed for it. So I will go over these and then we can have a discussion about them. So for land use, the potential impacts are scenarios 1 and 2 proposed land uses that are inconsistent with the current zoning. The proposed outdoor amphitheater as part of the Community Performing Arts Center on Parcel 3 is not currently a recognized use in the Minneapolis zoning code. And scenarios 1 and 2 propose building heights over what is allowed under the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area and the Shoreland Overlay District. So mitigation strategies to address these potential impacts are that all parcels would require a zoning change. Currently, the site is all medium and general industrial, and so they need to be rezoned to allow housing, commercial, a park, things like that on the site. The zoning code text amendment to allow the outdoor amphitheater would be needed. That would be a citywide text amendment to the zoning code. The comprehensive plan amendment to align the proposed parcels with the future land use plan and to allow additional building height. Specifically, that is for parcel 7A. And then a conditional use permit and height premiums to allow additional building height would also be needed. And conditional use permits and height premiums would be addressed during the land use review for each individual site. So site 1A is housing. It would still need to go through planning commission and be reviewed for compliance with all of the zoning code rules. So that's where you would be asked to like comment on a conditional use permit or the height premiums to allow that additional height. For impacts and mitigation for geology and soils, grading activities are anticipated to begin in late 22 or early 23, and the mitigation strategies are that the appropriate permits from the different city, state, or federal level permitting agencies would be needed to be obtained by the developer, the construction company, whatnot, to move forward. For water resources, under surface water, potential impacts are upland, shoreline, grading along the Mississippi River is proposed within the park area for restoration. Under stormwater, stormwater management would be required for new development, and that is the case for all new development in the city, regardless of where it sits. And then under wastewater and water supply, existing footings, foundation, and utilities may encounter some groundwater and would require dewatering during construction. And then water-related infrastructure will need to be extended and or reconstructed to accommodate development. And then for the mitigation strategies, under surface water, regrading the shoreline would require permitting with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And for stormwater then, stormwater infrastructure would comply with the City of Minneapolis Code of Ordinances, Chapter 54. And then individual and district system stormwater management approaches are being considered. So we are working with MWMO, or we're in conversations with MWMO about doing a district-wide stormwater approach to the site instead of each individual site meeting its own stormwater. In either scenario, at the end, all sites will meet the stormwater requirements of the city. And then for wastewater and water supply, a permit will be required from the Metropolitan Council for a sanitary sewer extension and permit to connect. A permit will be required from the Minnesota Department of Health for water main installations, and a temporary water appropriations general permit for construction dewatering will be required from the DNR. Our next topic then is contamination and hazardous waste. So the potential impacts that have been identified: demolition debris and earth materials will be generated during demolition of existing structures within the study area. Construction of either development scenario would generate construction-related waste, and scenarios 1 and 2 would generate new demands in solid waste management and sanitation services provided in the project area. And then the mitigation strategies: ensure compliance with applicable laws, rules, and ordinances related to the management of solid and hazardous waste as required by Minnesota statute. sorry, I live in the airport flyover zone, so I apologize if you can hear those. Coordinate with the MPCA regarding the required plans, material handling and disposal, notice of intent of demolition for removal of buildings, and then a construction contingency plan and response action plan for the MPCA approval will be needed to document plans for handling unknown materials during contamination. For fish and wildlife and plant communities, the AUAR study area provides limited and low quality native vegetation habitat. Wildlife that can be found within the study area include birds and small mammals that have adapted to the highly disturbed urban environment. There are no records of state listed, threatened, endangered, and special concern species within the AUAR study area. However, black sandshell mussel, the rusty patched bumblebee, peregrine falcon, and a great blue heron nesting site are found within 1 mile of the AUAR study area. Mitigation strategies for this topic. DNR concurred that negative impacts to known occurrences of rare features are not anticipated. We did receive a letter from them, and that is in the AUAR document that was just released the end of May. Audubon Minnesota Bird Safe Building Guidelines will be used to develop strategies to avoid and minimize impacts to migrating birds to the extent practical. Wildlife-friendly erosion control methods will be used within the study area to minimize impacts to land and aquatic wildlife using the site during construction. Native plantings and vegetation restoration will be used to promote pollinator habitat and wildlife habitat. And shoreline restoration on the site may improve ecological functions and remove invasive species. Under historic properties, the State Historic Preservation Office concurred that the Upper Harbor Terminal site is not considered individually eligible for National Register of Historic Places listing, but is considered contributing to a larger potential historic district. And that larger potential historic district spans from the lower locks and dams up to this site. And again, these documents are in the AUAR and can be read there. And then the other potential impact is that the Upper Harbor Terminal site has been identified as potentially eligible as a local City of Minneapolis Historic District. The mitigation strategies that have been identified are consult with the State Historic Preservation Office under Section 106 of the Historic Preservation Act of 1966 when acquiring federal funds, permits, or authorizations in a federal undertaking. Evaluate options for adaptive reuse, preservation, removal, redevelopment, interim stabilization measures for existing buildings and structures. Explore interpretive planning that allows for phased implementation and balances the significance of the site through time and across cultures. And combination of soil cores, ground penetrating radar, and shovel testing is needed to identify whether historical structures remain beneath the surface. For visual potential impacts, scenarios 1 and 2 would include restoration of natural vegetation, structural tiering, meaning the heights of the buildings as you move further from the river towards 94 in this case, or towards the west, and then preservation of public views. And the proposed community performing arts center will include outdoor lighting to be used during shows. The mitigation strategies is all lighting will be subject to the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area Plan requirements. The use of outdoor lighting for the Community Performing Arts Center is subject to a conditional use permit. And then lighting and visual impacts are regulated through the City of Minneapolis's Development Review Site Plan and permitting process. For noise, potential impacts are scenarios 1 and 2 include residential buildings and planned green space that are considered sensitive noise receptors. Scenarios 1 and 2 include a community performing arts center on parcel 3, which will result in elevated noise levels during major events. The mitigation strategies for noise are that construction activities will be conducted to minimize noise levels, and nighttime construction activities and permits related to construction noise will be obtained from the city if needed. An outdoor noise permit will be required before operating the Community Performing Arts Center for events, and installation of appropriate noise attenuation features in residential buildings and the community performing arts center will be needed. And these could be incorporated into the site or the buildings themselves. And I am going to turn over the PowerPoint presentation to Alexander from the City of Minneapolis Public Works Department. And Alexander, I can flip the slides if you want to just tell me when.
Before you go, if community members wanted to extend, damn, do I have an echo? Everybody?
Yeah, I hear echo.
Okay, I don't know what that is. I'm sorry. Does community get a chance to ask for an extension on the environmental review public response period? Like, who at CPED or the city has the ability to extend the period deadline? Currently, it's June 24th, and I think we need at least 2 months to be able to process, to be able to, caucus about it, talk about it, and then to be able to like formulate a response. And so I'm just wondering who actually has the power to yes or no that. Is there a vote that has to be done? Is somebody at the city in charge? Do we reach out to our council members? We've already asked Cunningham. He said he's asked who has that power to extend that. Have you guys responded to him? That's all.
Hillary, you're muted.
I would love to hear what you're saying, Hillary. Okay.
Sorry. Am I back?
I hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I have not heard that there's been a request to extend the public comment period. We're 1 week into it. There are 3 weeks left to go. As the RGU, CPED would make that decision to extend it or not.
Who at CPED? All of you guys, or?
I would speak to the city attorney's office about such a request if we received one.
Is that how normally the process goes? The community is asking for more time and we've got to somehow know to reach out to the CPED and the city attorney? Like who has access like that?
So for all of the environmental reviews that I've been involved in, only one has resulted in a request for extension of time period, and that was the Roof Depot site this spring. So
how much time did you guys extend it?
2 weeks.
Wow. And they had a month as well?
Yes. The state rules say 30 days. So we're following, so the state environmental review rules set up the process, if you will, for the AUAR. And so we are following the rules that the state has established.
So as a member of the Green Zone, can I request that you guys extend the comment period for 60 days? Something a little more adequate, especially for such a historic moment.
I'm not prepared to answer that question tonight.
Can you get back to us?
Yes, we can get back to you. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll hop in. I'll be really quick because I know there's a lot of questions. I just have a few slides. I'm Alexander Cato. I've been working in the public realm space, so the roadways and utilities for this project. With the AUAR, obviously transportation, is a really big impact, right? There's congestion, there's a desire for multimodal facilities. So my work is really focused on how do I get people safely to and from the site, and how do we minimize impacts on the transportation system. So there are really two scenarios. Phase one, which is the method that we're moving forward based on the developable units on site, is estimated to be less than 6,000 trips a day to and from the site. And then on Dowling and Washington, estimated to be less than 15,000 vehicles a day. For the second phase, or scenario two, it would be more than 6,000 trips a day at the site, and then more than 15,000 vehicles per day on Dowling and Washington. Hillary, could you move to the next slide, please?
Yep.
So with the phase one, these are the pieces that we are implementing in our design. So we're developing a robust TDMP. The developer will be responsible for doing that for each of the developable units on the site. That is forthcoming in our site review plan process, probably in a couple of years. That's typical to how we do all our TDMPs throughout the city. When a developer comes with a proposed site plan that has vehicle access points, et cetera, we do a TDMP to analyze impacts to the system and put forth mitigations. In addition to that, based on the estimated trips for this site, we are adding in a few improvements to the roadway network. So we're adding in a westbound right turn lane, as well as extending the eastbound left turn lane. If you've ever driven or walked, primarily if you've driven on this section of Washington and Dowling, you know there's a lot of vehicle queuing that occurs. So these improvements are meant to help mitigate those impacts, as well as installing some permissive left turning. So we're just trying to ease some of the vehicle movements at this area. We also are providing a bunch of multimodal improvements as well, but just from the AUR mitigation standpoint, I'm just focusing on these vehicle pieces. Next slide, please, Hillary. And so this is with phase two, and these are much more intensive recommendations. And this is if we exceeded the 6,000 trips per day on site, exceeded the 15,000 vehicles a day on Washington and Dowling. Based on the comprehensive and the coordinated plans, we will not be exceeding these thresholds. If we did, we would be extending the east and westbound left turns on Dowling. We would be constructing an eastbound right turn at Dowling. If we went into that realm, we would either need to widen the bridge or add in a separate bike ped bridge, which has been a popular topic in all of our engagement, but it's not something that we have the funds to provide at this point in time. Not to say it could not happen in the future. Next slide, Hillary. So this is the event management transportation framework. This is still very conceptual. I know through a lot of the engagement we've done, there's been a lot of concerns around how much traffic the concert venue will generate. With any development, the ones I alluded to in the past, and with any development for that matter, it's very standard city process to go through a TDMP, which is a TMP traffic management plan. Similar to the Armory did it, US Bank Stadium did it, Target Center did it as well, in which the developer puts forth a framework and develops some strategies around how to mitigate traffic impacts. These on the screen are just examples of what could be done. This actual TMP has not started yet and will be coming out in future years with the actual development. But we put together this framework to help highlight some of the potential considerations that are going into play here. Just sharing this on the screen if folks have questions on that. And I think that's it for me, Hillary. Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yes.
Real quick, yep.
Oops. Yep. So next steps.
So that was it for me from a transportation. If you have questions, happy to answer them, but just don't want to talk too much.
All right. Thank you. So next steps in schedule. So this gives you a snapshot of where we've been in terms of the AUAR in relation to Upper Harbor Terminal. We are on the bottom row on the left, May 25th to June 24th. So this is the public comment period for the AUAR. After the public comment period closes, we respond to comments, and then we publish a final AUAR for state agencies to review. And if there are no objections, then the city council would approve the AUAR in September of this year, and then construction is anticipated to start in 2022 or 2023, depending on the different phases. So for commenting on environmental review, we do need written comments submitted because we do reply to those comments, and that is the rules that the state has established is to provide written comments, so we can provide written comments back. So this is, you would send those comments to me, and I will then the Kimberly Horn and myself and the development team will take those comments and formulate responses to them and then publish that with the final AUAR that is published later this fall. So that is the end of this presentation, and I will stand obviously for any questions.
Before we get into raised hands, I saw that there were a few questions coming in through the chat. One was related to the, and I'm going to get the acronym words wrong, but the MRCCA, I think the critical area overlay, and why that overlay has a maximum height and why the mitigation strategy is to get a permit to exceed the height limitation.
Again, these are, I guess the best way to answer that is, yes, those are the rules under the MERCA plan, I believe is how you say the acronym. We're not changing the rules. The development, each phase of development, if exceeds the height limitations within the MERCA plan, then a conditional use permit or variance would need to be applied for. And that would be part of the land use review or the land use entitlement process that any development in the city would go through. So it's not a guarantee or a given. Anything in this document, maybe I should say this from the beginning, like the AUAR does not approve the development plan. Each phase of development will have to still go through the standard land use review process that any development goes through in the city. And so we're not proposing to change the rules in height. We're just saying that if you exceed the 65 feet, you need a conditional use permit. And so that would be the mitigation strategy that would be needed to exceed that height.
So why is there a maximum height in the first place?
Well, I know Jim's on this call too, and Jim helped write the MERCA rules. But it is to preserve views, from the river and of the river. And so that's, as we had talked about that, the development in the
it seems like the rule is in place specifically to prevent a development like this. But then you're saying that the mitigation strategy for this development is to rework the rule.
One would have to seek a conditional use permit. This isn't unlike there was just a new housing project at Broadway and River Road that needed a conditional use permit to go above what the MERCA height limitations are.
Aren't mitigation strategies supposed to decrease pollution? Because I'm not understanding how changing zoning, which I think is kind of interesting. So companies can change zoning when they want. So we can make things happen for housing when corporations want to do it, but we can't change zoning in our own community in an industrial neighborhood to get polluters out? Are y'all serious? So this stuff only works for the rich, not for us in this community. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. I mean, the site is zoned industrial. It allows what is there right now. To put housing, to put commercial, to put a park, we need to rezone the site away from I2 and I3 zoning to zoning classifications that allow for mixed use buildings, that allow for production and facilities, that allow for the park. So the site needs to be rezoned for any of the potential uses to happen. And I2 and I3 is specifically our general industrial district. So today, anything really big, bad, and ugly, you can probably do it in the I3 zone. You could do it along the river today, but that's not what we want to see in the future. So we want to rezone this site. I would think the community would want us to rezone the site or would want the site rezoned.
But why do we have to always, why do rich people get to benefit off of this? Why couldn't we benefit off of that? Why now can we rezone for other folks to make money? off of the land that we needed housing on in the first place. Like, how is it? Just doesn't make sense to me. Hillary, does it make sense to you?
The whole, so with the adoption of the
Coming from my perspective as a community member, would that seem fair to you? That the community's been fighting to clean this area up. And as soon as we get a little bit of, success with like moving a shredder out and like all of a sudden now the land is for sale. The only developers who the city adopted, it was one plan. We didn't get another one. And boom, we're here 6, 7 years later with the same plan and community is fighting back. And you're telling me that just tell me that it seems fair to you that a company could come in, get changed zoning for their business and for housing for people not that can't afford it in my neighborhood. Somebody tell me I'm not crazy.
I think there are two things going on there. One is the zoning change would happen regardless because of the comprehensive plan and the future land use. I think the other question and very valid point that you're raising, Roxanne, is just the whole way that we do development and allow capitalism in our country. And I would agree that that is entirely unfair. And I think traditional land use law is one of the biggest limitations that we have as city governments in actually being able to make development more equitable, and particularly to get rid of polluting industrial facilities. And I know we've talked extensively at other green zone meetings about grandfathering and ways to get around that. And we'll continue having those conversations.
So residents and community members have been pushing for these changes, not the people coming in trying to buy it. So I just want to be clear, because you said something that kind of like hurts my soul, Hillary. How can you say to me that you would think that community members would appreciate this? It's almost like throwing something at my face like, well, at least it's not another Northern Metals or a GAF. We thought this is what you wanted. Like, why can't it be something that we want, but also you're getting rid of the things that are killing us? Like, do we get a chance to appreciate our own shit sometimes? Or are we just getting bought out by corporations, and corporations just have no soul, no consciousness? They don't even want to talk to the people like us who actually are raising these concerns. They would rather talk to people who are ready to package and sell this land.
Question for the group. This is Andrew here, and apologize. Computer died, so now I'm here on the phone. And maybe some of the presenters can help in this regard. Is there a specific area where some of these things haven't been decided? I mean, is there an opportunity for us as Green Zone and community members to still get a say in something? I mean, can you highlight any areas where assessment is still ongoing and we can focus our attention to get some of these things addressed?
When does the exclusive rights agreement end?
Can
I do not know the answer to that question.
How much time?
Yeah,
It's
hold on,
6:50
Leslie.
It's 6:52. I'm just keeping the time.
Eric, thank you, Leslie. Eric, I don't know, do you know the answer to that? Or Hillary Holmes?
Excuse me. I'm in the middle of about 3 things here. Exclusive rights agreement goes into the end of the year, but we're expecting that at that point in time, we will have term sheets for the first few development sites and a plan for the infrastructure. So the exclusive rights agreement just basically sets out the rules for the 3 parties that are participating in the planning of this project, which is the developer, the park board, and the city. And that goes until the end of this year. And as far as advice on this project, what I would say is to take time with the AUAR, take time with the collaborative or the coordinated plan. We haven't, unfortunately, had a chance to talk about, I think, what are the components of the plan that align with what I think the Green Zone is interested in, and tell us where we need more and where we've done good and what's not good about it. I've heard a lot about what you don't like. Right? and then as far to Roxanne, to your perspective on zoning. Yeah, property rights in this country have an enormous right, and we have, even if I think the idea is to rezone all of the riverfront so you don't allow for this industrial use. Right now, you can build to right something pretty dirty on the Upper Harbor based on its current zoning. And we want to get in front of that so you can't do that. So we're not in a situation like a Northern Metals where we have very limited ability to close that down. And even if we did rezone it, they'd still have, to Kelly's point, that grandfather rights, and they would continue to operate or have, as long as they didn't do it a year and a day, anybody else that they sold it to would be able to continue to operate a scrap metal yard.
Eric, I
And
think
so
we both know that no, ain't nothing coming up in here no more. Nothing more is coming in here. So that's not true that we would have another facility coming up in here. You know it, that's not going down. And just because y'all are in a pollutant facility doesn't mean you don't have meetings with them and keep community members out of those meetings. Who knows what y'all talked about with GAF? You supposedly didn't want GAF to be a part of your development. I asked to be a part of that meeting. You got Barb Johnson, who used to be, y'all got a lot of corruption going on, Eric. I don't know what's going on, but I'm frustrated.
6:55.
thank you for your honesty, Roxanne.
Oh, always, because I can't, y'all, we can't keep moving forward like this.
I just got a question. My thing is about inspectors. Everybody's making plans, but I don't see any. I'm just concerned about the management and all the soil stuff and the waste. And we don't have that many inspectors. And I don't know if you're going to increase it because we're constantly opening the soil in the suburbs, all over the whole metro area, all over everywhere. And I just want to know about the management. That's my whole thing.
Inspectors for environmental contamination at the site?
Yes, there's nothing about how it's going to be transported, located, where it's going, and things like that, and the site itself under the construction. I mean, I call and report things all the time, and I wait and no inspector. And I know we have a lot going on in the city, but I don't know if it's the county or the city or the park boards, because I'm asking everybody, is there a plan to hire more inspectors for all this growth and development of population and the changes that we have going on in the city for financial reasons or whatever? I'm just thinking about the management of the land, and that's my whole issue about everything.
So there was phase 1 investigation on the land, and there will be additional investigation to find if there is any contamination. And there's also a response action plan if you find it. And everything has to be managed according to the MPCA's guidelines about contaminated materials. So if it goes into contaminated landfill, it's got to be transported in a certain way by a certain company. And so there's regulations around that. As far as inspectors, from a city standpoint, we unfortunately laid off people last year, and so we have fewer people working for the city in 2021 than we had in 2020. Now it's possible that changes over the next few months with the American Rescue Plan funding that's coming to the city, but we have a number of inspectors, either environmental health or building inspectors or licensing inspectors that are coordinating on larger projects. I hate to bring Northern Metals back in, but that's one that we're looking at it from a team effort. Fire inspections as well, around how to coordinate that stewardship. And we're mindful of the fact that we have something like Northern Metals in North Minneapolis, and what do we do in advance to make sure that doesn't happen? So the building materials we use, the environmental, the environmental certification, the type of businesses that are there. I think I heard a point earlier about, what is a living wage job? A living wage job is exactly what you said. It is always changing. And so we need to put jobs in there that make more than $15 an hour. We're talking like,
and that are
north of 20 or
consistent
more.
management jobs, we're talking about big, real consistent jobs, not just jobs that last for however long until it's developed.
No,
and then
I hear you. We're talking about jobs where you can start maybe at a low level and there's a path forward. So you're not capped at some place. So career tracked jobs, those are in emerging industries. We understand that there's a real interest in green
jobs, though.
Industries. Green jobs. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Mr. Hanson,
yes.
Mr.
Okay,
Hanson,
I'm sorry.
I not to cut you off, but with all this development and the lack of inspectors and the growth of population, and then the population that's going to be coming here for the music venues and things like that, with the lack of the police. And I mean, our whole environment has changed drastically. It has, besides the COVID and the events of the riot. And are these things being reconsidered into this area that is being traumatized by the violence that is plagued in this north side? And all I'm asking is, you have to reconsider about the humans that live there, and is this going to be a consideration and a play in the future planning of this, besides the inspectors and me and my soil issue here?
Yeah, to that point, well taken. I think about what's in the coordinated plan. I think about the access to the river, the 20 acres of green space. I think about the community's push, the CPC's push. I think about all the work the CPC has done. A few members are on here tonight, and making sure that we think about housing that's affordable to current Northside residents, jobs that are accessible to current Northside residents, a sense of belonging in the design, a sense of understanding how water interacts in this site, but also with the river. I think about the green jobs that have been pushed by the CPC. I think about the
we pushed all that. We handed it to y'all. I hate that we pushed for that, right? We pushed for that community, and it was turned into another city kind of committee thing. But I just want to say that, Eric, is we pushed all that. All that was on a list. We had passed that over to y'all. You guys didn't.
And now somebody's trying to make it happen. Now it's coming into action.
Who said
You
that?
wrote it, you laid it out. You laid it out. People took your plans. And tried to push them forward. This is Devon Nolan. Thank you. This is Devon Nolan calling from the North Side. Northside native, born and bred. So I appreciate all the leadership. I just want y'all to know we didn't forget about y'all. We didn't forget about your work, sis.
You're not expecting anything that has anything to do with my
I just want to say that it was not neglected. It was not ignored. I would not allow it. I would not participate.
Or the CPC,
so thank you
or EJCC, or Pillsbury. None of that. It has nothing to do with none of that. Because first of all, philanthropy dollars got you talking to your own sister from your own neighborhood crazy right now. Period. And that's why you're so clear.
Andrew, where you at?
Gave us a starting point.
You people,
yeah, hold on.
I was thanking you all for your work. Because it gave us a starting point. Thank you.
All the love coming from your voice, Miss Devon, who's always talking about
Roxanne,
you
she ain't gonna call me out on no fucking computer, and whole time she's smiling in my face.
Thank you for your work.
You know where I live, Devon. You know where I live. We can talk about this. You ain't gotta act brand new now. All of a sudden we on the phone
for your work. You're not the only
people.
All right.
Thank you, Kelly.
So we're at 7:03.
Somebody's trying to be a developer.
Thank you for your work.
We're at 7:03.
Learning really good passive aggressive white supremacist tactics too.
Call it whatever you want to call it. If you laid out blueprints,
If you have additional questions and comments,
to lay the foundation for your blueprints that you laid out. We can't all do everything and be everywhere. Either we're going to rebuild the trust, either we're going to rebuild the trust.
I just care about the soil.
Your plans were played. Your plans were laid out, Roxanne. This entire committee.
You
put attention to it.
30
Divine, Roxanne, you guys gotta take that off the call.
Hey!
I'm not getting any work done.
Hey!
Please, ladies, please.
Can you mute them?
I can mute, but they can unmute.
Now let's keep building. Thank you.
See Dana, see Brandon, see what all that shit y'all be pulling, how y'all do? You got this girl who I've known for years.
That's no blame to anyone. You can name who else you want.
I didn't
There's a document in the chat. If you have additional questions, I'll be sharing those with staff. And I think it's a good starting place to develop a comment letter for the Northside Green Zone. I think we can talk more offline about the request to extend the comment period because we won't have another Northside Green Zone meeting before that date of June 24th. And so even having another 2 weeks would be really helpful for the Northside Green Zone to be able to reconvene and approve a letter. I think there was one more agenda item, but seeing as we're at time, I think we can bring that up at our June meeting as well, which will be joint with the Southside Green Zone. And I think that was on the development criteria, which is a joint topic anyway. So
I just got a quick question. Is there possible, I don't know who did the AUIW, could I go out there with them to relook at that and evaluate it? I'm just interested. I'm interested because that was my core study, and I really want to see how the whole layout is with somebody that did that environmental report, if that's possible.
I'm not sure about the process. So maybe Hillary, if there was a specific consultant who worked on the AUAR, or was it done in-house?
Kimberly Horn helped or prepared the AUAR on behalf of United Properties, the city, and the Park Board, and First Avenue.
That would be fun. I'm that geek. That'd be fun. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So unless there are any announcements or anything else, does
Kelly,
one of
this is Devon Nolan again. I want to apologize because this is important work, and I want to be really clear about why I even decided to interject. Is because I don't want anybody who's put blood, sweats into. I'm not apologizing for anything. Who put blood, sweat and tears into laying out a foundation. And I just want to thank you all. Like, if you don't feel the sincerity in that, I won't apologize for that either, because all our trauma is very real. I live in an environmental overburdened community. This is what it does to our psyche. It's really hard to be well when you feel like everything around you is trying to kill you. So I'm not apologizing. I just really want to be clear about the passion, and that there are people on this call who are the very reason why I even knew there was a fight to be had. We all get to resist in whatever way we see fit for ourselves. There's all forms of resistance, and we need all of it. Thank you all. Call it what you want. All the fancy names. I don't care.
Thank you for that. We appreciate it.
I'd like to apologize to anybody if I've offended or out you in this meeting or any meeting. I'm only here to bring justice, to bring love, and to help to form a solution to the things that we have to deal with. I'm not here to be nobody's boss, but I will ask you, before you make a statement about me or to me, that you've gotten from someone else, please go back and check the minutes of each committee that I've been on and see. And the only payment that anybody, Leslie, you, me, Roxanne, has gotten is leadership for this committee. So let's be respectful and stay in a higher person. When it comes to these meetings, we all have a common goal here. That's the Northern Green Zone Task Force. And we can do that professionally. We can communicate with each other. We can agree to disagree, but let's be cordial and respectful of each other during these meetings. Thank
Yes,
you. I
ma'am.
love you all. I love you all with my whole heart. And I want what's best for all of us, the human race.
I just want people to treat us right and respect our environment. That's all. I'm tired of being sick and can't breathe hardly.
But Miss Leslie, in order to be treated right and be respected right, you also have to treat people right and be respectful.
I do. I do. I get passionate. Okay, we won't go there. Bye.
We have to do that.
I love everybody. I'm just a passionate person. My family calls me crazy. I'm okay with that. I'm 64 yesterday. I'm an old lady.
God bless you.
Well, thank you everyone for your time tonight. Thank you to our guest presenters. We will be in touch with further questions and comments, and hopefully further engagement in this process. And thank you to all of our task force members and additional community guests. I think some of these final statements very clear, like you're coming in with your passion. This is your community and you're fighting for what you need, what you want, what your family and what your community needs and wants.
And everybody getting paid real good, ain't worried about gentrification at all. Noted.
It's already happening. Y'all have a good night.
Yeah, okay. You one of them. It's already happening, so we might as well let it keep happening.
Okay, I make a motion that this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Ms.
I make a motion that this meeting is adjourned.
Like that first.
All right. Meeting is adjourned.